Hey guys, welcome. My name is Laura, and today I'm going to be answering one of the biggest questions that we get asked here at the studio, which is how to customize your skin tones. So you can see behind me that I've got three different versions of our peace sign girl. Now, obviously, there are dozens and dozens of skin tones in the world, but all you really need to know is how to mix these three different shades, and then you can customize it to what you want. So I'm going to explain all that to you today so that you can make your perfect shade. All right, guys, so your pods that you're going to need are the white, raw sienna, burnt sienna, and black. Now, raw sienna and burnt sienna, the raw sienna is that mustardy yellow color, and burnt sienna is the brown. So I'm going to start off with our lightest skin tone first. So with the lightest skin tone, you're going to need a decent amount of white in it. So you'll scoop out from your pod your white, and then we're going to need raw sienna. I'm going to start off with just a small scoop there, and then just a pinch of burnt sienna. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to mix these two colors together. So we're just going to mix the raw sienna and the white together. You can always add more if you feel like you need to. Like this is looking a little bit too pale for me. Keep in mind that when you're mixing any colors, a lot of it is just getting that color in the neighborhood of what you like and then just gradually adjusting it from there. So I'm going to add just a little raw sienna to it. And then I'm just going to add a touch of burnt sienna. Now, the reason why you want to add that burnt sienna is because just raw sienna and white tends to look a little too yellow, a little more jaundice. And then you're going to take and add just a little burnt sienna, and then that will make it look a little more natural. So this is a decent base color for me. So I'm going to take and just put it here. Something that you guys will notice when you're doing skin tones is that the first coat is pretty patchy looking. So just keep in mind that no matter what skin tone you use, whether it's the light skin tone, the brown skin tone, or the medium skin tone, it's always going to need a second coat. So that's pretty good there. Now, if you want, say this is too light for you, maybe you are trying to get this cast shadow that maybe you can see back here in the corner. All you have to do to get it a little bit darker is to mix a little bit more raw sienna and burnt sienna in it. So you would just kind of take your pile off to the side and mix a little bit darker shade. So that way you can compare the new shade to the old shade and then just use it that way. All right, so for the medium skin tone, you're going to be using the same colors, just a different quantity of those colors. So we're going to start off with burnt sienna because that is the main color in this. Scoop that out onto the plate. When you're mixing on an actual canvas, I'm only mixing small quantities for this tutorial because I'm not actually painting a full picture. All right, we're going to get some raw sienna, but when you are actually painting like an original, like one of your actual paintings, you want to try to mix enough of the skin tone to cover it in one go because we don't want it to be all patchy. So I know I'm mixing a small portion right now, but we really want to try to avoid having to remix our color halfway through painting, if at all possible. All right, so I'm going to need this white, but I'm going to mix these two together first. And the raw sienna is put in the burnt sienna to give that paint color a little more life, because when you just mix white and burnt sienna together, it tends to look a little bit ashy. So you want to add that raw sienna to make it look really rich in color. All right, so now I'm going to grab the white. And the white is just to lighten it up and also to make it cover better. White is one of the more opaque colors of acrylic. So it's always a good idea to add that in if possible. All right, so that looks pretty good for my medium tone. Something to keep in mind with the medium tone is that it tends to dry a little bit darker than you think, really with any skin tone. I shouldn't just say the medium tone. It tends to dry a little darker than what it is when it's wet. So if you're thinking, oh, that looks too light on the plate, chances are it's about the right color. But since you have to do 2 coats anyway, you can do 1 coat and kind of see, let it dry and see what you think about it. And then you can just adjust that color on the second coat. So you can kind of see how it's looking a little patchy. It's a little easier to tell on this one. You see how you can kind of see through it. We'll do our second coats once we get our first coat of each color. And the same thing is true for this color as was for the lighter color. If you're trying to get a cast shadow like this in here, this maybe underneath her chin up here, all you're going to do is add a little bit more burnt sienna to your mixture and mix it kind of in the edge over here. You don't want to use your original color so that way you can compare them and make sure that they are different colors. All right, so for our darkest color, you're going to need your black and your burnt sienna. We're not going to use white in this one because when you mix white with anything that has black in it, it tends to make it gray because white and black mixed together make gray. So I'm going to take my burnt sienna, put that on the plate over here. It's going to be mostly burnt sienna. Black is a very strong color, so you're not going to need much of it. And then I'm just going to take a little tiny dab. Start with just enough to cover the end of your paintbrush. So you can see right there, it's not much. You can always add more if you think you need to, but you can't take it out once you put it in. So always start off with a little and then just add tiny dots, just like touch your brush into the pot and then mix it in. All right, I'm gonna add just a little tiny bit more burnt sienna. Okay. All right, so then I'm just going to put that here. You can see how you can kind of see those brush strokes. We don't want her to look like she's got some sort of skin disease or skin condition. So we're going to do 2 coats on each one of these squares. So that is the basics. And then once you have that color mixed, then all you need to do is blow dry it or let it air dry for at least 10 minutes, maybe 15, just depending on how heavy-handed you were and how much paint you actually spread on to the canvas. So I'm going to use a blow dryer and then I will show you what that second coat does. All right, so we'll start off with the lighter skin tone first. So you're just going to paint over it again. The second coat doesn't usually need to be quite as thick as the first one because you're not having to cover just a white canvas, you're covering the same color. So every skin tone needs at least 2 coats. Now I have had some people want to do 3 coats. Usually 2 coats is more than sufficient, but that's kind of up to you. If you feel like it needs a 3rd coat, then you make that assessment after the 2nd coat. Let it dry completely before you decide though. It is important that you let the paint dry in between coats. However, you don't want to try to rush it and do it while the paint is still wet because your canvas can only hold so much paint. All right, so you can kind of see a pretty good comparison there about the difference between our second coat and our first coat. See, the first coat is really see-through, and then this one right here is a little bit more opaque and smooth. And then our last one. If you had mixed your color and then on your first coat you used up all your color, so say you didn't have any more left over, what you can do is what you want to do is make sure that you mix the color again before you start. So if you don't think you have enough to finish a second coat in one full go, then you want to make sure that you mix enough before you start. So just remix it if needed. So same thing with this one. If you want to do a cast shadow color or you want it darker, you just mix a little bit more black into it and that will do exactly what you need it to do. If you wanted it a little bit lighter, then you mix a little bit more burnt sienna into it. All right, guys. Keep in mind, we would love to see your masterpiece, so you can send it to us on Facebook or tag us in it on Instagram. And if you had any extra questions, feel free to reach out. Thanks, guys. We will see you soon.